I knew the moment Cordelia Ravenrest hit the floor, legs gone, weak hands shaking, FBI agents closing in, that everything she'd built for 15 years was collapsing right in front of her. Funny thing is, I wasn't even trying to destroy her when this whole mess started. I just wanted to launch a fishing boat on what she claimed was her lake. But that's how suburban tyrants fall. Not by armies or riots, but by a quiet man holding a folder full of truth. People think HOA stories are petty trash cans out too long, grass half an inch too tall. But this wasn't petty. This was a woman who ruled Lake Meridian like a throne, swinging bylaws like weapons. And I walked straight into her kingdom with a fishing pole and a stubborn curiosity that turned into something much, much bigger. My name is Thaddeus Sterling. I've spent 20 years in military intelligence chasing financial crimes across continents. I've interrogated cartel accountants, followed money trails through shell companies that would fry a normal person's brain. After retirement, all I wanted was peace, silence, trees, a lake to sit beside, while pretending I knew something about fishing. Willowbrook seemed perfect. Picturesque homes, nice neighbors, a massive glass-still lake, and supposedly an HOA that kept things orderly. Well, it kept things orderly the same way dictators keep things orderly. The queen of that little empire was Cordelia Ravenrest, always in a baby blue suit, always smiling without warmth, always reminding everyone that she protected property values. And like most people who say that phrase too often, she didn't protect anything but her own ego. I met her properly, if you can call it that, at 7:28 in the morning. The lake mist was lifting, birds were waking up, I was getting ready to cast my line. And then I heard tires crunching gravel like incoming artillery. I turned, and there she was. Cordelia, plus 2 SUVs, plus a documentary filmmaker, plus 12 sheriff's deputies forming a semicircle like I was a hostage situation. "Mr. Sterling," she called, voice sharp enough to cut water, "you are in direct violation of Willowbrook Covenant 47B regarding unauthorized watercraft on community waters." Community waters, that phrase. I still remember rolling it in my head, trying not to laugh, because as I sat there with my fishing rod, I knew something she didn't. I had spent the entire night digging through old county databases and dusty federal archives, and what I found changed everything. This lake, the one she stood on like a queen, was never legally transferred to the HOA. The developer went bankrupt decades ago. And even better, the Army Corps of Engineers designated Lake Meridian as a federal navigable water reserve in 1952, and the designation was never revoked, meaning legally she had as much authority over that lake as a random jogger. But I didn't say any of that yet. I just reeled in my line, smiled politely, and said, "Cordelia, would you like to see the federal documentation proving this lake has been under federal jurisdiction for 73 years? She blinked. Only 2 seconds. But for someone like her, 2 seconds of silence is a confession. That's when things started spiraling. She screamed about fake documents, waved toward her deputies like I was armed with a rocket launcher, and insisted the HOA had managed this lake flawlessly for 15 years. Which honestly was interesting, considering the Wisconsin Environmental Agency had evidence showing the lake hadn't received a single treatment or maintenance procedure in over a decade, despite residents paying hundreds of thousands for those exact services. And all those payments, they didn't go to a real contractor. They went to Willowbrook Holdings, LLC, registered to Cordelia's house. Yeah, it was that kind of HOA. But even with all that information, even with her facade already cracking, I wasn't prepared for what came next. Because the moment I drove back home, a community-wide email blasted out calling me an outside agitator, a legal extremist, a danger to property values. Classic HOA panic propaganda. And the worst part? People believed her. Folks who waved at me last week suddenly avoided eye contact. Neighbors whispered. A few even filmed me like I was building a meth lab in my garage. For the first time in a long time, I felt something unfamiliar crawling up my spine. Doubt. What if I really didn't belong here? What if fighting this woman wasn't worth it? What if I'd misread the documents? What if I was the crazy one I'd fought foreign terrorists with less anxiety than I felt sitting at my kitchen table that night, staring at those papers, wondering if I should just move, sell the house, start over somewhere without an HOA? I almost quit. I genuinely did. But then I opened the last folder, the banking records, and the numbers didn't lie. 15 years, $2.3 million. Funneled through a shell company. Zero actual lake maintenance performed. A community robbed quietly, efficiently, confidently. I thought about the people who trusted her. The retirees, the young families, the folks who didn't have the background to fight someone like Cordelia. They didn't stand a chance against a woman who weaponized fear and bylaws. That's when the doubt evaporated. I'd spent decades dismantling corruption for a living, and I wasn't about to let a suburban bully beat me into silence. The next morning, I compiled everything: federal permits, environmental reports, bank records, screenshots of shell companies' emails leaked from a concerned resident. I sent the entire package to a contact at the FBI with a simple note: "You'll want to see this." And then I waited. Waiting sucks. Waiting when your enemy is rallying a mob against you. That's worse, especially when you get an email from the HOA scheduling an emergency meeting to address dangerous misinformation threatening community stability. Translation: a public execution where I was the piñata. But I went. Because fear only wins when you let it. The community center was packed. 67 residents. Cordelia in another flawless blue suit. Board members sitting like royal advisors. The documentary guy still filming, probably expecting to capture my humiliation on tape. Cordelia opened the meeting like a seasoned cult leader. "This individual," she said, pointing my direction without looking, "has made false, defamatory, and destabilizing accusations. He threatens our way of life." People murmured, nodded. Some glared at me. And maybe the old me would have kept quiet, avoided escalation, walked away. But not this time. Not when the truth was heavier than her entire kingdom. I stood up, walked slowly to the front, opened my waterproof folder, and held up the first document. Army Corps of Engineers Permit 774982. I said loud enough for the back row to hear, designating Lake Meridian as a federal navigable waterway. Never revoked, never transferred, never owned by this HOA. Silence. Sharp electric silence. Then I held up the second document. Wisconsin Environmental Protection Agency records show 0 chemical treatments applied to the lake in 12 years, despite HOA members paying $340,000 for those treatments. Side whispers. Angry whispers. One lady gasped so loudly I swear it echoed. Then the third document. Bank transfers totaling $2.3 million from HOA accounts to Willowbrook Holdings, LLC, an entity registered, to Cordelia Ravenrest's home address. The room detonated. People stood, shouted, demanded answers. Some filmed her, others cursed. Cordelia tried to regain control, slamming her hands on the table, calling everything fabricated, insisting I was a federal impersonator. But the board was fracturing. Marcus was Googling things. Eleanor looked horrified. Dr. Blackwood asked to see the documents herself. Chaos filled the room, and then my phone rang. I almost didn't answer. But when I saw the caller ID agent Rebecca Morrison, FBI Financial Crimes Division, I knew this story had just changed chapters. I answered on speaker. "Sterling," she said, voice crisp, no nonsense. "We've reviewed your submission. We need to meet immediately. Federal jurisdiction applies. We're treating this as an active investigation." You could have heard a pin drop. Cordelia went pale. Not nervous pale, corpse pale. 27 minutes later, black SUVs with federal plates rolled into the parking lot. Agents stepped out with files, badges, and the kind of authority no HOA bylaw can compete with. The lead agent walked straight to Cordelia. "Mrs. Ravenrest," she said, "we have a federal warrant to search your residence and business for suspected wire fraud, embezzlement of federal property, and conspiracy to violate federal waterway regulations." Cordelia tried to speak, but her voice cracked like ice. The board froze. Residents stared. Phones recorded everything. And the agent added, "Your husband, Judge Preston Ravencraftoft, is currently being taken into federal custody for judicial corruption." That's when Cordelia's knees buckled. Her perfect posture collapsed. She had spent years intimidating residents, threatening fines, ruining people's peace. And now she lay on the floor while the FBI read her rights. I didn't cheer, I didn't smile, I didn't say a word. Because justice doesn't need an audience. It just needs patience. They escorted her out past the residents she'd bullied, past the neighbors she'd lied to, past the community she stole from. Her blue suit looked dull under fluorescent lights, like it finally understood it wasn't armor. And that's where the story ends. Not with a celebration, not with a barbecue by the lake, not with me giving some triumphant monologue. The moment the door closed behind her, the moment the Queen of Willowbrook fell, that was the ending. The rest, that was just paperwork. Because sometimes the simplest truth is the sharpest blade. Bullies don't fear strength. They fear someone who finally says enough.